Let's jump into lesson 2, where we're going to talk about torting, which is cutting our cakes in half horizontally, and we're going to talk about filling. Now, remember, today we have a 7-inch vanilla cake that we have baked in 3 separate pans. These pans are 2-inch tall pans, and we've got our cake board that we talked about in our first video, the 3 layers all sandwiched together, and we've hot glued those together so they're going to stay for us. So first, let's talk about torting. I tort all of my layers. Personally, I think it makes the cakes look more expensive. It makes them look more professional. I'm just not a fan of the 3 untorted layers. So let's go ahead and get into how we cut them. Now, these cakes are from the freezer, but they're not completely frozen all the way through, but they are very cold. Working with cold cakes is going to be a million times easier than working with fresh from the is going to be much easier than working with room temperature cakes. These cold cakes are much more sturdy and they're going to stay where we put them. So let's talk about torting. I've got my long serrated bread knife. This is my favorite type of knife to use. I do not like smooth edge chef's knives. You need a nice serrated knife. And I don't want a small knife. I need something that's going to go all the way through when I cut this cake, coming from this side and this side. So if you've got a cutter that cuts them for you, that's fantastic. You can do it that way. I have always cut my cakes without the professional cutters. So let's talk about how we do it this way. So I'm going to find the middle of my cake. So here I am, right here in the middle. Okay, and since my cake is pretty cold, I'm able to stand it up on its side fairly easily. And I'm just working my way around. Remember, I'm just sort of making myself a mark here where I'm going to cut through. Now, you can leave it standing up on its side like this and saw through. Okay, our cakes are cold. They're borderline frozen, so it's not going to smush on us. This is actually my preferred way of cutting them. So there we go. 2 nice, even pieces. Let's cut it a different way. Let's go over a couple of different methods. So our second method is just going to be down here on the counter. We're going to come halfway, just like we did when it was on its side. We're going to saw motion into it just a little bit, kind of making ourselves a mark. And I'm turning with this hand. Okay, my knife is staying still. So I'm turning here, knife is staying still, turning the cake with a saw motion, and I'm just pushing in a little bit more every time I go around. And eventually, we're going to get all the way through. And there you go. Okay, 2 great even layers. Okay. Here we are. We've got our 5 layers of cake and our 4 layers of filling. Now for our very last layer here on top, we want to use the bottom of the pan just like we used here on the bottom of our cake. So we want to keep everything nice and flat as much as possible at this point. So we're just going to cap that last layer there on top, push down just like we've done for our other layers, make sure everything is nice and adhered really well, nice and centered. And there we are. So now we have our 6 layers of cake and our 5 layers of filling. Again, if you're keeping track, this is a 7-inch cake. We have baked 3 pans. We've torted and filled them with about 12 ounces of. Now that we've got our cake torted and filled, we need to talk about ganaching. But before we ganache, we need to do 2 things. We need somewhere for the ganache to go. At this point, our cake is right up against the edge of our board. So that's not giving us anywhere to get that nice smooth ganache edge. And it also isn't going to give anywhere for our Profroster to glide around the cake. So when I say glide around the cake, I want to give an area here, as you can see, between the board corner and the Profroster. At this point, there is no area. It's completely taken up by cake. If I were to put ganache on right now, I wouldn't be able to get a nice smooth ganache. I would get a very lumpy and bumpy situation. So let's talk about how we can fix that. So what I want to do is come in with my serrated bread knife and I want to cut off these edges. It's going to do 2 things. It's going to give me a place for my ganache to go and a board for my Profroster to slide up against. It's also going to get rid of this discolored edge, which I'm not very big of a fan of. So we're not taking off a whole lot here. You can see I'm just cutting this edge off. See, it's not much. Just taking the edge off. I'm going to come in and I'm just going to cut all the way down and I'm going to get this charred, caramelized, well, charred is not the right word, caramelized is better, this caramelized edge off of my cake, and I'm making a little bit of room here on my base for my ganache to go in between the Profroster and the cake. So let's keep going around. Okay. This is going to make a much prettier slice for your client when they go to slice into your cake. You're not going to see any of this caramelized edge. You're just going to get beautiful cake. This is also going to help in a situation like this where I have a pink cake and I want that color to come through when the client cuts it. If I was doing a rainbow cake and I had multicolored rainbow, it would make a much prettier presentation for my client. Okay, so here we are. We've got all that edge sliced off. Now I'm going to take my knife up and down, okay, and I'm just going around and making sure everything is even. Okay, you can hold on to that board if you need to. And I'm just keeping my knife straight up and down. And I'm getting rid of anywhere where I'm not even and perfectly round. Okay, there we are. So now we've got a nice little lip for our ganache to be, a nice edge for our Profroster to glide around, and our cake is free of all the caramelization. Let's cut a little bit off the top as well. Now this part is just a personal preference. I'm just not a fan of the caramelized dark part, so I will take a second and remove all of them. If you didn't have much caramelization up here, that wouldn't be an issue. I'm also not going to be very concerned up top that everything is super duper level, because my Profroster is going to take care of that for me. So let's pause right here and clean up. All right, now that we've got everything cleaned up, let's talk about a little bit more about that edge we made. So when I put my Profroster on, you can see I've got a gap now. Can you see that gap in there? That gap is where my ganache is going to go. There we go, that's a better shot of it. That gap is where my ganache is going to go, where I'm easily going to be able to get a nice sharp line without seeing any lumpy and bumpiness of the cake. And I'm going to be gliding my Profroster completely touching my turntable and resting on the edge of my board right here. So it's going to glide around just like this, resting on the edge of my board. Okay, now let's adjust this top. So you can see I've got a lot of options right here. And to adjust it, I'm just going to pull back slightly and bring it up or down, and it locks back into place. So let's adjust it to the correct height for our cake here. This is too close, this is touching, so we need to go up one. Let's see if we're there. And again, just the same way we left this gap on the side, we need a small gap here on the top. We need enough room for ganache to go. We do not want the Profroster resting directly onto the cake. So now let's put our ganache on. So this is our concrete ganache recipe, and this came with your class. So I have microwaved this. You can sort of see the consistency I've got going on here. I've microwaved this to a very flowing, I'm going to call it, consistency. And I'm going to start here at the top, and I'm just working my ganache over my cake. Now, I do not have a thick layer right now. If you normally work with buttercream, you can think of this as your crumb coat. We just want a nice thin layer that's going to lock in to the cake. Okay, it's going to lock in the crumbs. Okay, I'm just kind of getting it all the way around. If you want to keep piling it on at the top and bringing it down, you can work with it however is the easiest for you. Okay, but we just want to cover all the surfaces of the cake. Now, I have started out here with 24 ounces of chocolate, and that would put me with 6 ounces of cream at our 4-to-1 ratio, and that should be just enough to cover our cake here. Now we're going to come in with our spatula tool that we talked about, and all I'm doing right here is I'm pushing in while I'm turning, okay? And this is just pushing the ganache onto the cake. I'm making sure I've got a nice, even crumb coat layer, okay? So I'm not pushing so hard that I'm leaving a dent, but I'm getting the extra off. Okay, so just like you would do a crumb coat. I'm getting the extra off, all the excess, and we're just pushing down to make a nice, even coat. Okay. Okay, I'm scraping the excess back into the bowl. All right, now, in just the time we've been talking and scraping, this is already set up for us. Okay, there's no need to go into the refrigerator at this point. This is ready to go. I can go ahead and cover this with my next layer. Now, I'm going to tell you that it's very, very helpful if you have the air conditioning on where you are. Even though we've got our nice firm concrete ganache, our nice 4-to-1 ratio, ganache is very much still a chocolate product, and it will still melt. So I have my air conditioning in the studio set anywhere between 69 and 71, just depending on the time of day and the amount of humidity I have in the air. So I'm going around right now, and you can see I'm not making, it's not going to be beautiful. We're going to use our Profroster to make it beautiful. We're just going around right now, and we're just getting all of the ganache on the cake. I'm going to scrape my last bit out of the bowl here, and it's going to go onto the top. Okay, now we're going to grab our Profroster, and again, we are flat here on the bottom, and we are flat here against our board. Okay, and I'm going to hold it about in the middle, I would say. And Profroster is staying still. The board is moving. Okay, Profroster is staying still, and the board is moving. And we're going around. Okay, we're going to scrape the excess back into our bowl. And then we're going to fill in the areas that are low. So you can see we've got some low areas here and some up here. We're going to fill those in with more ganache. Okay, I want to show you the consistency of the ganache we're using while we're covering. It's nice and flowing. The coolness of the cake is what's enabling the concrete ganache to set up so quickly. So let's go back in. Let's start with, you can see we've got some lumps and some bumps. We've got areas that need some more ganache. Okay, so we're going to, and this is up to you if you are more comfortable pouring from the top, or if you're more comfortable building up the sides like we had before. It's completely up to you. The only point we're getting at right now is just more ganache. We just want more ganache so that we have more to smooth out with our Profroster. Okay, here we go, back with the Profroster. We've cleaned it off. Again, we're going to hold it about in the middle. I'm going to hold it over here for you guys. We're going to hold it about in the middle, and we're going to spin our cake and not the Profroster. Watch, Profroster is going to stay nice and still. Okay, it's our turntable that's moving. Okay, so we've gone around once. Let's clean everything off. Okay, it can go right back into the bowl that you're using. Okay, so let's do it again. Profroster stays still. Going to hold about in the middle. And it's our turntable that's moving. Okay, can you see how it's already getting smooth for us? Okay, let's clean it off again. All right, now I definitely still have some edges. So we can see here we've got some spots, got some dents still down here. Okay, so let's put some more ganache on. Okay, anywhere we've got places that need some more attention. Okay. So you can see using the ganache is very similar to using buttercream. I was a buttercream cake artist for a long time before I switched to ganache, which might explain how I treat it more like buttercream. But it's just a different medium we're going to try to get the same results with. By the way, your Profroster does work with buttercream, so don't feel like you can't use it with buttercream, but we're going to be using it with ganache. Okay, so again, Profroster stays still. Okay, it's riding on the edge of our board. Okay, and we're just going around. I'll let the Profroster do the work. Okay, you see that edge developing there. Okay, let's clean it off. Okay, again, can go right back into your bucket. Don't need a separate bucket. Don't worry about that. Can go right back to where the rest of your ganache is. Okay, we're going to go again. Okay, and we're just building up this edge up here. Okay, we're looking good. Okay, so let's talk about down here. We're looking pretty smooth down here. Still got a couple areas. Let's turn it. Still a few that I want to get a little bit smoother. Okay, so let's do a little bit more ganache. Now at this point in my bowl, I have some thicker and some thinner ganache because we've been putting the scraped off back into our bowl. So just take a second and mix those together. It'll give us a little bit of a thicker ganache. You can see how it's thickened up for us because we've put some of the scrape-offs back in the bowl. Okay, and let's go back again with our Profroster. Okay, and you can see how there is no gap anymore right here. That's exactly what we want. We want that to just be gliding along. Okay, we're taking off the excess up here. Okay, and we are almost there. Okay, clean off your Profroster. Clean up those gaps, clean that bottom edge. We need all of that to stay nice and clean for us. Okay, so let's go around one more time. Okay, just give it a second. And I see we've still got a little bit back here. So let's work on this back portion. Okay, again, mix back up your ganache. Okay, let's pile some on back here. Okay, and let's work on getting this back a little bit smoother. Okay, here we go. We're just, Profroster is staying still, and we're using the turntable. Okay. All right, I think we are just about there. Let's do one more. Okay, just one more little turn. Okay, make sure everything nice and smooth. Okay, now I did not speed this video up. I did not cut it down at all. This is how long it took us to get that beautiful sharp edge right there and this wonderfully smooth cake. Now you can come in with your scraper. Again, if you'd like, if you see anywhere, got a little spot right there that we can smooth out. But this one did pretty darn good. Okay. Any of this will be just fine under our fondant. So there we go. And you can see it's already hardening up. Nothing's on my fingers. Okay, what I do want to show you, a little trick I do before this goes to set completely. Now you can set this in the freezer for about 30 minutes, or you can pop it in your refrigerator for around 2 hours, depending on where you're at time-wise. We're going to poke a hole here on the top. We're going to push it all the way down. Okay, I'm going to show you that. Nice little hole up there. That is going to let any trapped air escape. All right, so into the freezer for 30 minutes or into the refrigerator for 2 hours before fondant.